Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first Ethics and Compliance podcast. Today we will have a discussion about the Stora Enso Code. My name is Pontus Elderman, and I am heading the Ethics and Compliance function in this company. And with me today, I have two great colleagues.
Hi, everyone. This is Essi Veseri, and I'm a legal counsel in the paper division.
And my name is Yang Zhang, Compliance Counsel for Packaging Solutions and Consumer Board.
Thank you both. So one of the first questions I have on this topic is, we have a Stora Enso Code here. Why is it so that we need a new code? Essi, what do you say about that?
Well, first of all, our code has experienced a facelift. It has been pictured in a magical forest, as you can see. But more importantly, we have also put emphasis on why the code is important for us. Why is it crucial to conduct our business ethically and sustainably? So we have put it in a better context. And also it's our code. It's the Stora Enso Code and not just any company's code of conduct.
Okay, but I have a question. Why do we need a code at all in addition to all the policies and rules we have in the company?
That's exactly what it's all about, Jan, because the code is a summary of all the policies and guidelines we have in this company. So you take out the most important things from all steering documents we have and try to combine it, summary it in a code. Then you get the core of what we stand for in this company. And you can also call this the values of the company. I want to refer back to what our CEO Kalle says in the video that is on the site where you can read about the code. The Stora Enso Code is the fundamental document of this company and the handrail that you can hold if you have questions how to act, for example, in a specific situation. And that's the purpose of the code.
Well, Yang, you have read this code. What's really new in it compared to our previous version?
Right. I think the rules are more or less the same, but put into more context. I found more practical instructions and behavior expectations from our employees in different situations. And I think also the element of animals and the forest speaks more about who we are as Stora Enso, our culture of diversity, respecting safety and human rights.
So the code we are discussing here is sort of divided in different chapters. And one of the first chapters is called We Are the Renewable Materials Company. And here we are trying to explain what is Stora Enso, what is important for Stora Enso. Why is it so that sustainability, business ethics, and human rights are important for our company? And here we are also talking about choosing a renewable future. And this is something we often talk about in Stora Enso. And I would like to ask you, Essi, what is it that is so special with Stora Enso in comparison with other companies?
Well, what sets us apart is renewability, as opposed to, for example, only recyclability. Because our raw material, trees, they grow back. And our products also store carbon, which helps us to combat global warming.
That sounds fantastic. And I also hear another tagline in Stora Enso very much, and that is that we believe that everything that is made from fossil-based materials today can be made from tree tomorrow. Can you say something about that, Jan?
Sure. This is very personal to me because recently I participated in the Accelerator program and working with a young startup company. And their vision is to replace disposable plastic toothbrush with fiber-based or formed fiber toothbrushes, which gives me this learning that replacing fossil-based material does not necessarily need to be big items that requires rocket science technology. It can be small objects in our daily life. We just need to start and keep looking. Pontus, we are always so proud that we are a company driven by value. What exactly do we mean by that?
Thank you, Yang. I think that an organization that is driven by values do two things. First of all, they try to formulate certain values, what they really stand behind, so to say, and then they also communicate these values. And thirdly, when, for example, making a decision in a troublesome situation, then you go back to your values and try to act upon it. And in this company, we have a purpose, which you all know, but I will repeat it anyway. The purpose is do good for people and the planet, replace fossil-based materials with renewable solutions. And this purpose highlights our belief that Stora Enso can contribute to a greener planet. And in order to guide ourselves in that direction, we have also formulated two values, lead and do what's right. And these values mean that we try to set an example in all aspects of our business, as well as sustainability. We constantly ask ourselves, what more can we do? What can we do better?
Right. And Essie, if I can ask you this, in practice, do these values guide your work behavior?
Absolutely, Young. So there are many circumstances where there are no rules, or at least no clear rules on certain actions or behavior. And a good example, practical examples, are gifts and hospitality. So, for example, is it okay for me to accept a Christmas present from a law firm, for example, that we're working together with? And the laws and regulations doesn't necessarily say anything about whether I should accept that present or not. But then, as Pontus said, I can go back to our values, and our values will help my decision making. So today everyone's talking about sustainability and are claiming to be sustainable, even so much so that the word sometimes feels meaningless. So Pontus, can you tell us how Stora Enso is committed to sustainability? What does it mean to us?
Thank you, Essie, for that very good question. I think this is in connection very much with our purpose, do good for the people and the planet, because sustainability and the sustainability agenda for Stora Enso means very much how do we make our purpose real? What does it really mean for us? And the sustainability agenda goes like a red thread from all the operations we have in Stora Enso. And it means sometimes that you need to consider trade-offs between what we call the triple bottom line, the social agenda, the environmental agenda, and the economic agenda in all our operations, I would say.
Now, I have a question. There is a column called human rights in addition to these three agendas. Why is that?
The short answer here is that having respect to fundamental human rights is so important for everything we do. It can never be compromised.
Thanks.
If we then move to the second part of the code, we lead with our values. And what does it mean in practice? Well, first of all, we're of course all committed to our code and we honor it. So the code is a guideline for us all in our daily work. And in practice, this means that it will help us in complying with the laws and regulations and making the right ethical decisions in our work. And it also explains how to live by our values and safeguard our reputation. And in addition, it also describes how to report unethical behaviors, which we will come back to a bit later.
Essie, I have a question. Different people have very different values, especially in different cultures. Are we now saying that people should think the same?
Absolutely not. So the code doesn't try to streamline our thinking in any way. To the contrary, actually, it promotes diversity. And it doesn't try to limit our freedom of speech and our right to speak publicly about matters of public concerns. And of course, the code doesn't have all the answers that you may have, but it does have guidance on where to ask when we're in doubt.
Thanks.
And in addition to honoring our code, another part of leading with our values is speaking up. So reporting any concerns helps us address challenges before they develop into bigger problems and fix issues that have already surfaced. So whenever you think a colleague or a business partners may be violating the values in our code, please do report it. And you can do so feeling safe and comfortable because Stora Enso will protect anyone who raises an honest concern. And Pontus, can you tell a bit more? How do we ensure such protection?
In this company, we have what we call a non-retaliation policy, which means that we have a zero tolerance against any kind of mistreatment against the person who speaks up in good faith. And that this might come up in different ways, but we are of course very dependent on the person being mistreated reporting about that as well. And if it comes up, and it might come up in our anonymous whistleblowing channel or in any other way, then that will be investigated as well, and we will take action against the person having broken our code also in this respect.
Thanks, Pontus. And to continue a bit about the culture of speaking up and how to enable it, well, we also need to listen up. This means that all concerns and different views should be welcomed, heard, and addressed by the employees' managers. And managers must make their employees feel that they are listened to and that their opinions matter, even if the topic is difficult to talk about. And managers have the responsibility to forward any serious complaints to internal audit and the ethics and compliance team for further investigations.
I think we are all familiar with the term do what's right being one of our values. But what does it really mean in our daily work? The starting point is simply to follow laws and regulations. We all think that breaking the law is impossible for me as a person, but that's not necessarily true. Crossing a red light, speeding in traffic is breaking the law. And things can get quite complicated when you go to work. There can be regulations, requirements from the law that we don't know as a person, but is actually required from us as a business.
Okay, so here I have a question then, Jan. What happens if the laws and our Stora Enso Code says different things? What happens then?
That will happen because we are operating in multiple countries and we only have one set of rules. And as you said in the beginning, Pontus, the code is the fundamental principle we have in Stora Enso, and therefore we must follow the code as a bottom line. And if the local law requires additional standard to the code, then we of course need to follow that as well. So we need to meet both the code and the local rules.
Young, I would have another question.
Sure.
We talk about we all the time. So is the code applicable only to us as Stora Enso employees or someone else as well?
I think nowadays in the society, you can never be truly alone. Things you do will have an impact on multiple parties, and things other people do will have an impact on you. So behaviors from our agents and consultants will have an impact on Stora Enso's reputation, because in other people's eyes, they don't necessarily can tell the difference from this is from Stora Enso or from its supplier. And that is why we require all of our agents and consultants and suppliers also to honor our code when they are acting in relation to Stora Enso.
So if we proceed here, we come to the next topic, which is corruption. And corruption is one of the biggest plagues of all in the world. It has effects not only for economy, but also for example, democracy, wherever we do business. And there is an NGO in the world called Transparency International, and every year they try to measure the perception of corruption in the world. And what we can see is the corruption is actually increasing in most countries, despite all powerful legislation we have and so forth. So my question to you, Young, is how does corruption affect a company like Stora Enso? And what kind of rules do we have in the company to try to prevent it?
Precisely. I think corruption, as you said, affects the public sector, but also the private sector, and that's where we are in. And also, majority of the countries in the world is struggling with corruption problem, and we are operating globally. And therefore, corruption is an issue that's having an impact on us on a daily basis. The word corruption can actually mean very differently to different people. And to us, it simply means the starting point of not offering, promising, or accepting any bribes, any facilitation payment, which is of small value, but to grease the palm, so to say, illegal rebates in a sales and purchase structure, or any other unethical payment for that matters. As Essi said in the beginning, a small gesture, like a gift in the hospitality, if taken in the wrong scenario, can actually have an impact and be considered as corruption as well. We have a very clear rule of not giving or accepting any cash or cash equivalent. And a cash equivalent, for example, can be a shopping cart to a local supermarket. We always pay our own travel and accommodation expenses, and we always disclose if there is a potential conflict of interest.
And here I have a question, Jan. We talk sometimes about conflict of interest. What does it really mean, and what kind of rules do we have in relation to that?
A simple example can be that my wife, for example, is working or even owning a company who is trying to be a Stora Enso's supplier, a law firm. And I am in the legal department trying to buy that service. That is a typical conflict of interest. There is a very important aspect of doing what's right, that is to know our business partners. I always struggle with what exactly do we want to know about them. Essi, can you tell us more about that?
For sure. So we work with tens of thousands of suppliers, customers, consultants, and other business partners that are all over the world. So when we know who they are, we can reduce the risk of becoming involved in some unethical or illegal activities. So before we select a business partner, we need to conduct a due diligence and avoid partners that present a risk of bribery.
Right. And due diligence is this quite fancy legal term, isn't it? What do we mean exactly by that?
So yeah, that's the kind of words we lawyers want to use. So due diligence is basically a long list of questions that we want to ask to our business partners. And those questions are a bit different depending on who we are talking with. So it depends on the risk, it depends on the country we're talking about, and it depends also on the kind of business we want to conduct. But basically it's questions about the background of the business partner that we want to find out before taking them on the Stora Enso ship.
Right. So basically a list of questions and checkpoints. Maybe that takes a lot of time to go through. Do we need to do all the questions to all the business partners we engage with?
No, so we don't need to run the same set of questions to all potential business partners. Instead, we only check partners that present some sort of risk. So we have a risk-based approach. And for this, we have tools available in our website or WeShare. So before you engage a potential business partners, you just need to know about the tools and which tools to use. And these tools include programs for tax havens, anti-money, or questions for tax havens, anti-money laundering, and trade sanctions.
Great. Good to know that. Competition law risk probably is the most severe legal risk we have in ethics and compliance, maybe in the whole company. Over the years, we have spent thousands of hours from the management and God knows how much money into antitrust investigations and even lawsuits. Essi, can you tell us what are the basic and most fundamental principles we need to know about antitrust?
Sure. So competition law or antitrust law is very complex and not even lawyers may necessarily know the rules in detail. But what we all need to know is that we do not agree on prices with our competitors. We do not share markets or allocate customers or otherwise restrict competition. And it also means that we do not share competitively sensitive information.
Yes, but here I need to ask you, what does that really mean? I always hear this word, competitively sensitive information. Can you give an example?
Of course. So competitively sensitive information can include data on our prices, discount policies, other terms of sales, market shares, customers, and so forth. But like I said, the rules around competition law are complicated, but we all should know the basics. But whenever in doubt, please feel free to come to us in legal and we'll help you for sure.
Okay, clear. So remember these basics and turn to legal when we are in doubt.
So speaking of competition, we as Stora Enso, we compete to win. And in winning, our assets play an important role, and we need to do our share to protect them. Pontus, can you tell us why and how can we do so?
I think we all employees need to remember that we are all entrusted with different kind of assets, and that can be different depending on who we are and what we work with. But I guess most people in Stora Enso, for example, have a phone, a computer, maybe they have a car, or maybe they run a big machine. So these are examples of different kind of physical assets that we are all entrusted with and need to protect, of course.
So we talked about tangible or physical assets. How about intangible assets? Jan, can you continue from there?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Thank you, Esty. I think nowadays intangible assets such as our patent, trademark, our innovation results, R&D plans, they can be even more valuable than tangible assets sometimes. And that's why we need to make sure that we protect them with good care. We do not share those information before they're ready, and especially not to those people who are not authorized to have access to them. But speaking of which, what to share and what not to share becomes extremely challenging in a digitalized world as we are living in now. Pontus, what do you say about that?
Good point. I think that digitalization is a great opportunity for most companies and for Stora Enso as well, of course, and for the people working here. However, it also poses different threats. For example, how our personal data should be protected and so forth. And that's the reason we have new legislation in the whole world. In Europe, we have, for example, the GDPR legislation with exactly that purpose.
And you mentioned personal data. Is that a defined term? Has specific meanings to it?
Yes, you can say, to give a simple explanation, personal data is all kind of information that relates to an individual, for example, name, ID, number, email address, and things like that.
And as Stora Enso employees, what do we need to keep in mind when it comes to personal data?
Exactly as the situation is with competition law, the rules are complicated, but it's enough for us if we know the fundamental rules. For example, that we collect all and process data, personal data with a clear business purpose, that we collect the amount of personal data that is necessary for a specified purpose, and that we are very transparent on how this personal data will be used. That's enough.
Thank you. Okay, so we talked about data privacy and protecting personal data. But in some situations, we must communicate and publish information. How and when do we do that, Pontus?
I think that what we need to think about here is that when we communicate something, we do it in a clear and transparent way. Very much in today's society is about communication, and as a multinational company, it's very important that we communicate clearly and transparently so that people out there have trust in Stora Enso. Jan, you are very keen when it comes to communication on social media, I have seen. What do you think about when communicating, for example, on Facebook and Instagram?
I think that's a very important aspect to consider, because nowadays people can easily have multiple social media accounts, LinkedIn, and as you mentioned, Pontus, Instagram and Facebook and what have you. And some of these accounts are extremely work and career related. And when we post stuff on those platforms, people don't necessarily know whether we are representing our own view or for the company. And most of us are not authorized to represent the company. So make sure that whatever we post, we make it clear it represents our own opinion. I think that's very important.
Good. And when talking about communication on social media, I've heard this expression digital footprints. What
Right.
does that mean to you, Jan?
Basically, it means that things you post on those platforms on the internet, they never go away. They will be there forever and ever. And that just make it more so that we need to be extremely careful of what we write on those accounts, especially when they are associated with our work.
One very important chapter in our Stora Enso Code is that we care for people and the planet. This is also part of our overall company purpose. For these two topics, we have the pleasure to have two guest speakers with us, Johanna Purunen from Group HR and Ylva Stieler from Group Sustainability. Welcome.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Jan.
Johanna, can you tell us a bit about Stora Enso's approach towards safety?
Yes, sure. Safety is really priority number one in Stora Enso. We want everybody home safe every day. And with this we mean our own employees, our contractors and suppliers, our visitors on site. And we want to build an open safety culture where everyone can give feedback to anybody else. So there are no organizational hierarchies in our safety culture. And our goal is really to have zero accidents, and we work towards that every day.
Exactly. And you have mentioned that everyone home safe every day, which is very true because we have a big employee group and we have people coming from very different cultures and backgrounds. What does that mean to us?
Yeah, that's true. We have very different kind of employees working for us, and we believe that that's one of our strengths. So we really believe that diversity strengthens our competitiveness. With diverse working teams, we are able to explore different perspectives and challenge our way of thinking, and this way contribute in better decision making. And with diversity, we mean various aspects of diversity, so including like gender, age, ethnicity, skills, experiences, culture, and so on. But I also think that diversity alone is not enough. We need also inclusion. We need a working environment where everyone can be themselves and feel that they are able to contribute with their views and that they are listened and valued. And with this kind of combination, diversity and inclusion, we are able to make best out of it.
That's very true because everything at the end of the day boils down to people, how we treat people and their rights. Human rights is a term that is quite general and can have very different meanings. Ylva, what is our definition of human rights in Stora Enso?
I mean, respecting human rights is really a quite simple concept. Is treating people with decency and respect, and I think we can all sign up to that this is a good thing. But you are right. It's a UN or United Nations framework. It is set out in international standards and in national law, and of course, Stora Enso follows these. And they can be quite hard to understand sometimes. But you will all be familiar with many of these human rights as part of Stora Enso's guidelines and commitments. Zero tolerance for discrimination and harassment, for instance, is a key principle for Stora Enso, but also a human right. To have your voice represented in decisions impacting your situation is one of the fundamental labor rights. And what we already heard earlier today, everybody home safe every day, the key message when we talk about operational safety at our mills, in the forests, in the office, also a human right. So this is really something that we deal with every day.
Right. So human rights is not just another general term, but has very concrete meanings in our daily work. Quite many we have actually heard from Johanna just now.
Yeah, I think that this inclusion and respecting human rights, they go very much hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Can I ask this question? We talk about human rights. Are we only looking at our own employees, or do we also look at a bigger population?
No, it's much wider than that, but I think it's important to start looking at our own operations and our own people to understand what that means first. But absolutely, this is a much broader concept. Our commitment to respecting human rights covers all business activities. So that also includes contractors, suppliers, customers, and neighboring communities. So we need to make sure that all the interactions we have with these people are also dealt with in decency and respect, and to allow them to enjoy their rights as well.
Absolutely. And Ylva, you mentioned communities, which is quite interesting because traditionally companies look quite narrowly at their own operations and supply chains and premises. What do we mean by community rights?
Well, everywhere we operate, we are part of a community, whether that's a large or a small community, or an urban or a rural one. But we are always part of a community. And we work to be an active member of these communities, and for good reason too. Because we're dependent on them to attract and retain skilled employees, but also, of course, for sourcing important raw materials. So we want to make sure that these communities continue to thrive economically, socially, and environmentally also in the future. So yes, we want to be an active member in the community and bring in our expertise and experience to help them address issues that are relevant to them.
And how do we exactly do that? Do you have some practical examples?
Well, there are various ways or topics that we engage on, but the underlying principle is to, of course, to listen to interests and concerns of the local community and address those and address local needs. And often it is about trying to minimize our impacts of our operations on the community, which could be noise or smells or heavy traffic on and off the site, but it could be various different things depending on where the community is in the world and what the setup of the surrounding looks like. But we think in any case, an investment in a community makes good business sense because it will benefit both the company and the community in the long run.
That's very true. Thank you, Johanna and Ylva, for joining this podcast and discuss with us these very important topics. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a renewable materials company, Stora Enso is in a unique position to combat global warming. Our wood-based products provide low-carbon alternatives to fossil-based solutions. And they store carbon, even through recycling. Trees in sustainably managed forests absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and act as a carbon storage. We also combat global warming in our operations by, for example, improving energy efficiency and replacing fossil fuels with biomass fuels. In addition, we were the first in our industry to set ambitious science-based targets to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, both in our operations and throughout our value chain. This target will help us to do our share to keep the global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius as agreed in the Paris Agreement. Our main raw material, wood, is renewable. It grows back. Our products store carbon and they are recyclable. Many of them are also biodegradable, and they can all be used to make renewable energy at the end of their life cycle. We only source wood from sustainably managed forests, and we use resources as efficiently as possible. All of these gives us the opportunity to operate both in a circular and bioeconomy and to positively impact the global climate and environment. But our operations and our value chain do also produce emissions to air and water. To safeguard biodiversity, waterways, our climate, and the soil, we work continuously and systematically towards better environmental performance by setting targets, measuring, and reporting on our progress. We believe that all of our employees can help us in being better. Ask yourself, what more can I do to promote sustainability at work?
So we're coming to the end of this podcast here, and that is about Speak Up. For me, Speak Up is one of the most important principles we have in the company, and it's also one of the focus areas in ethics compliance. So Jan, what does Speak Up mean to you?
Right. To me, I think Speak Up actually starts pretty early. It starts way before the hotline, for example. The hotline, I see it as the last resort. I think Speak Up is the daily sort of behavior that we should have. When the manager has a different opinion than my own, then tell him about it. When we see a mistake in our teammates, make sure that we point that out in a constructive and friendly way. I think that's Speak Up in operation to me.
Thank you, Jan. And you speak up all the time in relation to me, so I know what you're talking
Right,
about.
of course. Fully agree.
So Essie, if you really want to speak up about the sort of serious concern, for example, that you see that someone is doing something illegal or ethical, what do you do?
Okay, so there are 4 ways to do that. First of all, whenever possible, you can contact your and discuss with your manager. Alternatively, you can discuss with your local HR person. Or then you can discuss with the head of internal audit or head of ethics and compliance, meaning you, Pontus. And last but not least, there's the Do What's Right hotline. And in the hotline, there are 3 ways to report a concern. You can do that online, by email, or by telephone. And you can also do that anonymously.
Thank you, Essie. And with those words, we now close this ethical podcast about the Stora Enso Code. If you ever have any questions about the code, or if you have viewpoints on what we do within ethics and compliance, please contact me, Pontus Elderman, or anyone in the ethics and compliance team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.